right, John.
Is it working?
Yeah, we're on now.
What about sound?
Sounds good.
Can you tell?
Yeah, little green bars on the.
Oh, it tells you on there? Oh, yeah.
It's bouncing around.
So, today I came without a hat by mistake. Then I said, I guess I can go without a hat. I know people think I got these thick, heavy hair that goes down behind me. But
No one believes that, John.
no one thinks that? Oh, okay.
Let me soon
Title
we'll
to-
see why.
I'm entitled to my own delusion.
Apparently.
So anyway, this is me, and what am I going to do about it? Nothing I can do about it much.
You didn't bring your hat, didn't bring your ears. You're all jacked
didn't-
up.
Who needs them?
Yeah. Hat and ears.
I can't even believe I haven't got a coat on.
Well, I was actually surprised you got a nice shirt on.
Wait a minute, I always have a nice shirt when I'm here. I don't wear
Nah.
I don't wear sweatshirts here.
You should look at the old podcast. You'd wear nice shirts, and it's just gone.
Decline. Did you have something in mind about leadership today?
I think about leadership all the time. I mean, you can certainly find
everything
a topic.
is tied to leadership, you know.
It is.
Everything. I mean, poor leadership is a problem because it affects all the way down through the caboose.
That's why I have kind of a hearty, I've mentioned this before, that there's some people that like really irritate me who are in a leadership position. I hate that term, but they are the leader and they irritate the hell out of me. But then I try to catch myself and be like, let me back up just a little bit because this crap's hard. Because if something is connected to so many things, it's really connected to success of anything that matters. I think that's like the main thing there. There's not all things that requires leadership. I mean, maybe some elements to it. Like if I were to play a video game by myself, it really does not require leadership.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. But anything that is worth obtaining is too difficult, takes too long for you to do by yourself. This is kind of how it works. There's some element to like other people involved, and then that's when you really start to get in all those things. But then the other aspect to it, other than just the people, is just like the thing itself, right? That vision, that project, that thing itself, the only way to success is to have leadership.
I was on the road to leadership in Bible school. That's when I first knew I was. And I was in a homiletics class, and I had to give a sermon to the class. And the teacher, of course, would grade you. And
So what's your age on this?
and they would criticize you or whatever if you were good and everything.
How old are you?
How old was I?
So here Bible school, and I don't know why, but immediately my mind went to like, what were you, like 6?
I call it Bible school. It was Elam
yeah.
Bible College. But
Oh, okay. So you're talking 19, 20, 21.
I would say it was 72. No, 73. 1973. So, I can't believe it's that long ago. Anyway.
50 years ago.
And so I was up there, and the guy goes, Edgar Parkins was teaching it at that time. Old ripe banana guy, he's just been through everything and super sweet. And actually, the next guy was a great big old Englishman, nasty man. He was really tough, but actually, when you got to know him, he's really quite a nice guy. But anyway.
Tends to be how it works.
I got up there. The one thing that he told me that blew me away, because I got up there and it was easy for me because I had been studying the Bible like crazy since I got saved for 3 years, and I was very astute as the scriptures and the Bible because I was in it for hours and hours and hours every day. So I'm reading this scripture and I'm going to give this sermon, and he wanted it to be expository and all this stuff. Anyhow. Which I like to teach that class to a bunch of people that are speaking today. But anyhow, that's another story. So I got up there. You know what he said? He said something to me that wrecked me the rest of my life. And I've said it to some others. If you're going to do it, do it. If you're going to get across the point, act like you really believe it. Have some passion, have some fire. And if you don't get up here and do it because I'm not interested in your boring talk. And boy, I said, hey, wait a minute. And I realized he was right. And a little while ago, about less than a year ago, a good brother, really, really good brother, he was up talking to some men at a men's meeting. And you could barely hear him, and I have my hearing aids on, but he kind of just talking and chatting, and I don't know if he was into it or not. It didn't seem like it. When he got done, we sat down to do some talking about stuff, have a cup of coffee, and I said, let me say one thing to you. You're going to not like me, but you're so boring and so quiet and almost have no fire. It's like sitting down, listening to a dripping faucet. You gotta have some fire behind you, man. Come on, act like you really got it, dude. Have some passion. And I don't know if he took offense to that or not. I don't think so. He's still a really good guy, a great guy. But, and I was hoping that the fact that I told him that might set a fire under him to begin to be. And so it is with leadership. I think leaders have to. The one thing I like about Trump is he knows he's the president and he acts like the president. Yeah. He's going to be the president, and I don't give a damn if you like it or not. I'm going to be the president, and I'm going to act like it, and I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. At least no one wonders. I mean, he ain't perfect by any means, and he's got a lot of things he needs to have, but man, just don't get in his way. He's the leader, and that's the end of the story. And when he went to all those country leaders, were all up there on a stage, and then finally Trump came, and he comes in and walks across these leaders like he's the leader of the leaders, puts himself in the middle of the picture, moves a few guys over, and stands up there like, I'm the leader here, you know. And he was, and he acted like it. And I said, we're not used to that. You know, and I understand being humble, but I also don't understand being wimpy. You know, and we got men that are so emasculated, they can't be a man, stand up and be the leader. That's chauvinism, that's whatever. And so they do what they can to beat down anything that stands up for itself. And I just don't like that. I think it's terrible.
So here's my comment on this, that in particular, because I've spent a lot of time thinking about this specific topic because I've got some friends. I've told you about them, and you said you haven't met them yet or whatever. But we've spent, 5 years on this topic. This what I don't like about what you said there, but I appreciate, is it's a narrative that it's like it's a very victim narrative. It's a narrative that the world is beaten down and demasculating the men, right? So that's a narrative, that perspective, how I see it. You know, another way I view this as this is the crucible that the proverbial men from the boys get separated. And the reality being, it could be the case that, let's say there's 7 billion people on Earth, that we probably don't need 3.5 billion men. But that's the implication of it. Now I know that what I'm saying, because I do agree with what you're saying, that I do believe it'd be much better if there was a lot more men around. Men being that they are going to take, they are, yes, exactly. Instead of boys, that what they're, because at the end of the day, it's the crucible that makes the man anyways. So the problem is, in my opinion, more than likely, is they're like, wow, it's so like effeminate and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, it's true, but at some point the lion has to come up and like eat that. It's another one of my friends, the same group of people talking about the same topic. He was bringing up something along the lines of, I don't remember, it's like a quote from like a book or something about that if you're powerful enough, the rules don't apply to you. It's like something like that. And I told him, this is true, actually. And this is fine. I know that sounds ridiculous, but the truth is the person who is a leader, who's responsible for the thing, has to be able to step outside of the rules, because the rules are not all-encompassing. They're actually not all-encompassing. They're actually guidelines. useful ways of doing things, and then that there can be the times that they need to step out of it. But guess what? The person who is strong enough to do that will do that. But everybody else, they're not strong enough to do it.
Who's that guy on your cup right there?
Thomas Jefferson.
Yeah, just to look at him, looks like a. Look at that cup. I mean, he just looks like a leader.
Well, somebody drew him that way.
I
They
know.
didn't draw him like he just rolled out of
He probably
bed and
did, yeah, right.
sitting on a podcast and maybe his hair doesn't look
being
right.
stupid. Yeah.
But you
But,
know,
you know, I
tying the
agree
whole
with
thing
you.
together is just like the truth is, and he doesn't get it because he's still kind of morphing out of the boy phase, but it's moving longer than it should because of the way the world is right now. The reality is it's a lot more cutthroat than this. You either get out and you get big enough to become a lion, or you're with the women and the children. Period.
Yeah, I think everybody respects a leader that's strong and willing to put himself out there and make decisions. Even not trying to be a leader, he just is naturally.
Correct. That's what yes, for sure.
Yeah, I think that's important.
Well, the reality is and this is why I can't stand that leadership position crap, because what you just said is the situation, and the opposite, which is kind of what you're implying, is just fake. That's what this world believes. This world believes that you're in the leadership position. Dude, I don't respect you. So you can't lead me. Like, literally, you can't lead me. You're going to walk in that direction. I'm going to say, no. And then they're going to do things like, well, I'll deduct your pay, or I'll prevent you from being able to work here. That's because you're not a leader. You're in a managerial position who is clueless and delusional about the real world. That's one of my favorite things about living where we actually live. And it's this weird byproduct that none of us work together, right? No one in this entire county works together, just about. You know what I mean? No one. We're not part of the same mega corporation here where we're all just a bunch of underlings. And so what that actually means is only leadership is present.
Well, of course, a lot will disagree with you because they're a leadership in their own mind and in their own world. So some people think that's not true. I know people that are leaders. I'm a leader in their own mind, in their own setting. They think they are, but they're basically not making a difference. And this is what I wanted to talk about. This is the reason why I brought this up is leaders, true leaders, make a difference. They either lead or rise up and say yes and no to certain things that the sheeple just follow. And the guy goes, wait a minute, hold it. Leaders come up, they bubble up to the top, even if they're not trying to be, and say, this is far enough, or we got to go this way, or some kind of thing that makes them what we call leaders. But when we talk about leaders in the Bible, to me, I'm talking about ministers who are in a ministry of sorts, of some kind. That statement, everything rises and falls on leadership, is because the ones that are in charge and are making decisions either are leading or they're in the way. I hate to say it, but sometimes, what's the matter with that church? Well, the pastor, he's in the way. He's not doing anything. But
I'm trying to be careful about that right now in the
we
role
have
that
to be
I'm
careful.
in, because I'm not the person that's running the ball. Period. Full stop. I know the guy, I think he thinks that he wants me to grow over the top and take him, but it's that's not how this works, dude. You're clearly the person who should be running this thing until you actually step away. And we have to do a transition plan where you go, you're the person who's now going to run it, and I'm now going to be over here.
Yeah.
Because until that happens, they're waiting on you to tell them. And when I say things, it's that's a really good idea, but you're not going to do it. It's different than this guy just says.
then you're not gonna
This
do
other
it.
guy just says something uneloquently, and then they take that as the proverbial word of God, and they go do it. But the reality is there's a lot of things that I think really need to be changed, but it just isn't now. And if I were to bring it up, that's going to muddy the water and try to and ultimately sidetrack specifically what he's specifically trying to do. So I won't do it.
Yeah, when it hits the true leader, then the rest that are following him or influenced by him, they move. But if it doesn't hit the leader, it's just rabble rousing. It's just complaints. It's just mumbling.
Yeah.
amongst the crowd, and nothing's really changing because it's just mumbling. But when it actually hits the leader, whatever it might be, and the leader goes, "Hey, wait a minute," and he has to make a decision there. That's when leadership takes off. That's when the decision is made by somebody and the whole group goes with it. Like Moses, he had complainers and grumbling. In fact, most of the grumbling that talks about was done by the children of Israel. Grumbling, grumbling, grumbling. But finally it hit the leader. When it hit the leader and he said, "No, this," then everybody went, "Oh, yeah, okay." And God many times came in sovereignly, divinely, or whatever you want to call it, and said, "Okay." He told Moses to do something, strike the rock, and water came out of the rock. Well, I mean, everybody got that water and said, "No, the leader, he's the leader. He hit the rock. He heard from God." Nobody could fight that. Nobody could say he's not the leader and that wasn't the right thing to do. It's just stupid. So we have to be, leaders have to hear what God is saying and do it. And sometimes when they don't make a move or they don't move in faith and they're not in tune with what God wants to do, they become just like everybody else. Everybody else. They're just walking around mumbling, complaining, or not mumbling, just talking it up, but getting nowhere. And then finally it hits the leader, and the leader stands up and says, "Hey, we can't do this, or we got to do this, and suddenly there's leadership taking place. Suddenly there's somebody actually leading, making a statement where the rest can hear it and go that way. That's all I'm saying. I'm not really trying to make anybody leaders, because I think that in the church, God raises up certain leaders in different ways. As the Spirit decides to do it. That's scriptural. But today,
Why do you?
Today we have a real problem with real live leaders that have some fire. I mean, how many times have you heard guys get up and talk, and when you're done, you go, "Oh, that was nice," big deal. But then you get like I don't know who, but like Rubio just got up and gave a speech that was like, hit the ball right out of the park. And everybody knows that man is a leader. That kid, he was born to be a leader, and he probably will end up being a leader of the country if everything goes that way.
Marco Rubio, you think so?
I think he's got more leadership potential and strength.
He's been a senator for a pretty long time. He's a senator for a pretty long time.
He's been around for quite a while, and he even ran for president, but he went against Trump. And Trump ticked him off, and at that time there was nobody going to beat Trump. It just wasn't going to happen because and that's the kind of a funny thing. If you study that, you realize this guy was not the leader, but as far as him in his mind, Trump said, "I am the leader. The rest of you people aren't even doing anything. You're sleepy. You're lazy. You think you're entitled. I don't do that. That's not the way it works." And he took over, and everybody had to move over. Move over. Trump's here.
I mean, to that point. Again, I keep bringing this stuff up because I think it's all the same. I see no differentiation. Like you did a qualifier a minute ago about like in ministry, it's all the same. It's all the same. The reality is whether or not when you have a presence, a thing, I just call it influence. When you have the influence that dwarfs some other entity, they have no choice but to follow you. It's this kind of quasi magic that's involved. You've talked about, for example, like anointing or this or that, or like from the Spirit. That is a discussion of origin that's somewhat uninteresting to me in the sense that everything has an origin, but the reality is it's all the same. So maybe they all have the same origin, and then it comes out, but it's all the same after that. It doesn't matter what space it's in, whether it's in a house, it's in a church, it's in any of that stuff. And so that's why it drives me so crazy with like the corporate environment, because they put people in these like positions, and it's like I can tell from 1,000 miles away that you're not at all a leader, and you're terrible, but you think that you are because you own the company or run the company, but you're not the locus of any of the movement in this thing. You don't have a vision for where we're going. You don't possess, and people intuitively know this. This is, I think, why people will follow somebody who starts speaking loudly. And it's not just speaking loudly, they're speaking loudly about the whole. right? We need to go over there. And they're speaking as though they've got the whole vision. So people are like, well, I've got a small vision. That's clearly a bigger vision. Again, this is all subconscious. That's a bigger point than, I'm trying to make this small one. I'm going to subvert this because what that person is saying, they're clearly seeing something bigger than this. And I've seen it time and time again. So it drives me crazy. But what I was kind of making a comment about being around here that I appreciate is there's none of that kind of corporate-y, structurally type fake stuff. And it's all just real stuff. Yeah. So different people. So for example, one of our friends who lives out there on the farm or whatever, she came over yesterday because I kept telling my wife, hey, you need to warn this person that if we get into this meeting and she has not talked to me first about it, she's going to be embarrassed because I'm going to embarrass her in front of this person that she's trying to introduce me to over some topic. We need to have a one-on-one conversation because we need to get clear on this before we turn into this group thing. I'm not going to get walked into some random group thing in the moment. So she came over, and again, we kind of we talked about like why we're here and what we want, these kinds of things, just general things. And it was very moving because we got down to the brass tacks of like, okay, what matters? And it was a very clear point that I was trying to make, which is like, you're describing what this person wants. So she's providing me intelligence effectively before this meeting about this person, which is, secondhand information. But it prepares me for a little bit about how they think about things. And so as she started describing what they want, I'm sitting there like, this is so narrative loaded. It drives me crazy because I've been around long enough to know, what do you want? Like, what do you need? What do you actually want? And don't try to dress it up in some weird concept stuff because you ain't going to make it. And the reality is you're going to make all these poor decisions because you're trying to go for this concept rather than the specifics. The specifics being like, our family, the example I gave was, I planted these hazelnuts on the side of our property, kind of as a fence, but primarily as a wood source. So it produces kindling. If you run a wood fire and you're serious about being able to heat and feed yourself and all these kinds of things, you start to get serious about the actual design and engineering of how you would go about that without having to use external resources. And so those kind of bushes are used for this kind of stuff. And so I can tell you after planting them that it's very successful. It is actually working. But if I instead left it at this kind of vagueness of like, well, I just want like orchards and this and that, you actually don't get that. So,
well, I think you're setting up the perimeters of what you're saying there is you got a big picture and you're trying to set up perimeters that get us toward that picture.
Yes.
Toward that want or need kind of thing.
But what people will do, to that point, correct. What people will do is they will choose something vague. So the concept was, I want a school. Like, we need to build a school. And so I kind of was breaking apart. And I'm going to actually do this later today because I'm meeting this person. And I'm going to help this person out because I've done this long enough and go, why do you want a school? And I heard a couple answers yesterday, which are like the typical answers, which are like, it sounds like, and this is, I think, an American answer. It sounds like, I want to do this over here, so I'm going to create a business to make money to then go do the thing because I don't have money, right? So that's like a very typical American answer. I don't know if any other culture has that answer, but that's an American solution to a problem.
Yeah.
But that's a terrible solution. One, you're not clear on what you actually want, and you've muddied it with some other activity. And the problem is because you've muddied these desires, you are going to forsake both of them because you're going to half-ass either one of them. If you wanted to start a school, you better know that there's a market demand for it and an unmet market demand in some capacity. So maybe it's a school for, I don't know, I'll just say handicapped people. So there's not enough schools of that nature for like handicap. But you need to know that because you got to get into the mind of the person that when they see or hear your thing, they're going to say, hell yeah. And so the want there's a specific kind of want that would want you that would make you want to do something like that, where you understand the customer and you're willing to listen to them, and then you're going to do that. And it ain't that. That's a completely different thing. That's a how do I make money scheme. Dude, you can go get a job. You can go do all their other kinds of things. And the money needs on the thing that they want. I started explaining, like, if you try to commingle these, the thing that you want has to be subordinated because, for example, it's like about like planting trees and stuff like that. If you get amateurs and you're trying to teach them and run them through, everything they do is going to be bad.
Well, yeah, I think you got a good point there, but again, it's going to take a leader to get up and do something about it, and people follow that.
Yes.
Follow that lead, and getting back to this big picture that we talked about before, I know the kind of picture. As I was sitting there thinking, this guy asked me, he said, "You think you're done, but maybe you're not done. Maybe you should do something that gets across what picture you see." Talking about churches. I said, like what? And he said, maybe you see some things that need to be done that aren't happening. Maybe you should make them happen. Maybe you should get started on that.
Is this recent? What?
Yeah,
what's the context?
not too long ago.
Okay, gotcha.
Not too long ago.
Gotcha.
And I'm like, that makes me wonder. I've started 3 churches. I've been a part of the startup of 3. So
Startups are not fun. Well, they're fun, but they're not fun.
well, there is no fun. There's none. There's no fun whatsoever. Because
Well, it's excitement because you're like, this is new. We're creating the thing.
It's totally challenging. And that was the big thing that hit me is the challenge.
That's challenge.
The challenge knocked it down. In my mind, the challenge that's too much of a challenge. But that may not be the answer. You have to hear a higher word connected to the big picture, but a higher word that says, just do this and see how it comes about.
Yeah, that's right.
You got to know what that is, and I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
And so I'm before the Lord in it otherwise. But someone has to take the lead, and someone has to get across if they can. I don't know how good I am, but sometimes I think I'm pretty good at it. Sometimes I feel like I'm not even close. To set the stage to say, this is what we're trying to make happen. This is what we're going through. This is the big picture. And that's difficult because, like we look out here, we can see the forest and the trees, and you can't see the forest for the trees. That saying, so many things get mumble jumble there. You really have to get the right point or the right push or drive toward a certain thing that plows through all that and makes something happen. Because that's really what's happening.
That is the essence to the point I was making earlier.
Yeah, it's the leadership that.
And if there's kind of 2 parts that you just said. You said this part in relation to there. You have to have the right vision, and then you have to have clarity on what that vision is, so that you can have clarity on the specifics that you need to do, so you can say no, yes.
Yeah, I think you end up saying no more than you're saying yes. Because there's so
hell
many other
yeah.
things that want to get in there, and you go ho 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 no. That's not. We're not going that way.
No.
And so that's a big deal. And so if there's a leader watching, he has to make up his mind if he heard right, if he heard the right word or heard the right direction, and if he's heard the right direction, he must maintain that road, stay on that road, and go toward it with some fire, with some passion. I mean, nobody wants to follow a boring, stupid, lackadaisical, not committed leader. They got to have somebody that's got some chutzpah, gusto, whatever it is, but that passion that says, no, I'm on this road, I'm going this way, and whether you like it or not, this is what I'm going to do. If you want to come along, you can, but remember, you have to sign. You don't have to sign anything, but you have to get in on the vision that I'm talking about, the picture I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And if you don't bother. We don't need you. We're not looking for people with other visions. That's fine. Go do that if you want to. I'm nothing against all the other things, but this is what we're after.
Here's so kind of where I eventually kind of figured this out, and I'm not saying that I'm good at this. There's
nobody's good at it.
There's a lot of what you're talking about that I feel less equipped than I should, and there's
Me too.
There's almost no reason I should have that, given my background and the fact that I have like 4 kids and a wife, and so there's like all these things, right? So you would think that I'd be secure in the things you're saying, but I eventually realized that the reason I got my wife is because she was basically like she was captured. Like she was like military captured, in the sense that she and like the and this is like the nature of like feminine. If again, this is a part of that conversations I've had for 5+ years. I swear, maybe it's even 7 years. It's gone on for so long that like if if you're talking about in a hierarchy of things, if a woman often wants to put you like wants to be here like above you, right? But if she can be, she don't want you. That's the truth of it. So there's this stupid game that that constantly is played of this like kind of dominance game where they kind of egg you on that you have to be higher than them, because then they know that this is like the evolutionary argument they make out there. Then they know I'm good and secure because this person, I can't even overcome them. So, that's much better. If I can't overcome them, then they could probably overcome other and this game never goes away. And so I eventually realized that the reason my wife and I were doing the courtship or whatever in college, and she liked me because I had this kind of general attitude, which was, okay, I'll say sort of superior, but that's not quite accurate. But anyways, so that I had a very like, I don't really care, F you attitude or whatever. So, but then when it came to like the courtship, I was very kind of weak about it. So it didn't quite work out. Then years later, I kind of rose up above it, especially with like some experience. And then all of a sudden I realized, 5, 6, 7 years later, oh, the only reason why this really worked is because I went, you're mine. It's not even an option for you anymore. And she's like, yay.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, if it was left up to her, it wasn't going to happen. So she needed somebody else to take that total control over it. And so, like I'm saying, I can't say that I'm super good at that, but it is a requirement, actually.
Well, I don't know anybody super good at it, but I do know this. We make a mistake when we say higher or lower. So
sure.
I talked about this thing about, and he shall have the rule over you, is a statement that God said to Eve about Adam, he shall have the rule over you. The word there was he shall rule or govern in order to bless her. So we have to get away. We have to learn, understand what this works, what this is. I want to talk about women and kids and all that down there. Is when God created man first, he created man first. Why did he do that? And everybody says, see, he likes men better than women. No, you're totally missing the point. Because out of man, he created a woman. That's what it said. He took a side of him and created a woman. It kind of has a lot more to do, instead of block upon block upon block, God and man and wife, it was more like a train. I create the engine. Now I'm going to create the second part of that engine that feeds that engine coal and gives that drive and power and fire. And then we'll hook onto that some kids. So it's more like it's going somewhere, but it's on the same track and on the same level. It's not like he's over you. He doesn't even have to steer. I thank God that he kind of puts us on a track to do something, and we think, oh, we got there because I made good decisions. Well, I'm not impressed with you either. Actually, he put you on a track. You didn't even have to steer left or right. You just had to keep the engine going. So you're not so smart as you think you are. But I think we are missing the point. God made woman, and then the kids later, and it talks about that, and then actually it goes down the line of family and slaves of the family. It even says that. We won't get into that, but I want to say it's equality that exists because we're on the same track and we're moving along a way, and someone to come and hitch their ride to me, but it didn't mean that I was lording over them. It meant that I was making decisions that would bless them. I was saying, we're going to go here to Seattle because that's going to bless you. So
but isn't that the nature of lord?
Sometimes we say up and over and above when it's really more like behind you, but not. It's like my grandmother used to say. She said, if you didn't have a neck, your head would be somewhere and you would never get to it. You would never be able to make a decision or get anywhere. But you got to have a neck. And I went, okay, that's fundamental. But later on, I realized if your neck is not in tune with you and holding you up, you know, the neck is very important. Without a neck, we're an abnormality. We look stupid. And I think in the right, proper order, because see, God made man and woman, then and allowed kids to come up, and then there would be other things in the family that would fall under that, even down to animals. But I think that we have missed it when we don't realize it's His order that makes it so. Not male chauvinist leadership. It's not feminism making women as good as, or all that kind of stuff. It's God's order. He made an order, and in order for that a blessing to fall in the family, they recognize the order. They're not trying to be out of that order. And there's a great big discussion on, I don't get into it. Can a woman be a pastor and pastor a church?
Oh yeah.
And they're in charge, and they run the church and everything. And I sit back and I thought about this for a long time. Sure, a woman can be a pastor, but the problem is that woman being not out of order necessarily, but there is a certain order that God set up, weakens that group. Not bad, but it's interesting that when a woman is a pastor, very few strong men come out of that church. Why? Because the order isn't quite set right. Now, I know a woman Sister Gamble, who had her husband was the pastor, and he took care of the church and oversaw the church, but she was a tremendously anointed minister in the church and in the world. She used to go to the Philippines a lot, like with some miracles. But that church had because they have strong men, because there was an order there. I think we fight and want to make sure well, if your order is off, you're going to, God is set up order for a reason. It's for to bless us. By the way, He's the leader, and He governed and did things in order for us to be blessed. Same thing with His creatures, who He made it, man and everything. So we have to see it as order for blessing, not a hierarchy or an up and down. It's not that at all. I mean, you don't lord it over. You got this wrong attitude. Even Jesus said, when they talked about the disciples, they talked about the Gentiles and how the Gentiles were doing this, and someone was in charge, and they were lording over the other group and everything. And Jesus said, "This is not the way it's going to be with you guys. I'm not going to allow you to do it that way. I have set up divine order, and divine order brings the blessing. So don't try to get out of order. If you get out of order, you get out of the blessing."
Do you think, I'm now going to counter this, do you think that obviously we're talking to a particular audience, so I'm very well aware of that. And our audience is probably 45 plus, maybe 38 plus. And so they probably can appreciate that. I'm skeptical that argument holds a lot of weight for somebody who is in their 18s.
Who's what?
Who's 18 to 23. And the reason being, not that I don't disagree with the nature. I actually really like that train concept, and also the order of things. But the reason why I said what I said is because the majority of males out there are too timid to take.
Oh, the problem out there is real.
It is real.
It's real, and I agree with you.
There is
a salvation or an answer.
The absurdity of it is actually imbued in my own life, to be perfectly honest. My background gave me so much stuff for free that I did not earn. And I realized how many people do not have any elements that I have in my background. And so ultimately they'd have to be individually somehow pushed. So maybe they have better parents or something that maybe kind of puts some of this stuff in perspective. So maybe that kind of environment. But for me, I had, like, when I moved from California in particular, and I moved to North Carolina, that's when things completely changed. And I was in 8th grade, 7th and 8th grade. So then I did 8th grade in North Carolina. And it was like a culture shock I was totally unprepared for. And I went into a ridiculously tougher environment where I didn't realize that California was so, floaty. It's actually what I would say that most people's lives are generally like. It's just kind of floaty. You're just going along, there's work and
Flaky.
friends or whatever. It's actually quite shallow. Now, when I went to North Carolina, I started meeting some like really tough people. Like when I was in, I think 9th grade, my friends were a group of people that I think were seniors at the time, or something like that. And I kind of met them like maybe late 8th grade. And those boys were wild. I mean, wild. Way more wild than anything you can hear of today. The stories that I was raised on from these people were like shocking, to be quite honest. They would go, so we lived about an hour and a half away from Greenville, North Carolina, which there's ECU there, Eastern Carolina University. They would go there when they were like 20, maybe it's like 19 or 20. Actually, I don't know, it might have been actually like 18, 19, 20. They would go there, like 5 of them. They would go to they would find random parties there, like big college house parties.
Sounds like my hippie days.
They would get totally inebriated and beat up the entire house. They would fight the entire house. Mm-hmm. These people were wild. I knew like this one kid he was even older than them, like 22, which of course is like a grandfather when you're like 14 or whatever. But and why he was hanging out with me, buying me beer at 15, I couldn't imagine being 22 and hanging out with a 15-year-old. But long story short, like these were wild boys, but they also had kind of like an order to them, and they were like very nice to me. They were like perfectly fine. But if you stepped out of line or whatever, they'd like put you in place. So I have that as my background. I haven't met one person in my entire life that had anybody even close to something like that. And I hang out with those people all the time. So that for me was like a very normal kind of nature to who they are. One of them punched me in the face when I was like 21 years old. And we were like at a party and I kept messing with them or whatever. Okay. But so before I even made it out in the world, I had already had my first punch to the face for my mouth running off to somebody who likes me, but still ain't going to put up with it. Long story short, and then from that nature as well, my dad was in the Marine Corps my entire life, all the way until I was like 15 years old, and then I joined the Marine Corps, which the entirety of and then went to like officer candidate school, which one of the main things at officer candidate school is starting to prepare you for that experience of moving all these people, that you're given the position, right? Okay, now it's your turn. Now it's your position. You have to command all these people and you get kind of more, used to that experience. So I had all these experiences. So there's like no excuse. Most people don't have any of these experiences, even close to any of these experiences. They just don't.
A lot of them don't.
And
a lot of them don't.
And I mention this as a sort of a cautionary tale. I don't believe that a lot of the things that you're saying there would have been fiery enough to move me to care.
Yeah, well, I'm talking about church today and the need for it in church. But that's a unique thing about church. There's all kinds of people that come into church, like you, and all kinds of these different people with all kinds of backgrounds and
yeah, no kidding.
And you're up there and you're looking at them all, going, "What in the world?" And so
it's quite the hosh posh.
Well, yeah, when you're big time and when you're leading people like that, you have to talk about the big picture. If you don't, you can't possibly say enough to catch every single one and get their attention and come along with me. They have to catch that vision. And so somehow the leader has to be passionate about something, because people will follow. They're sheeple. They're not just people. They're sheeple. They're made that way. But sometimes they follow the wrong way. Like Jim Jones ended up poisoning them all in whatever the heck that country was in Africa. So
leadership isn't safe.
Yeah, so we have to understand that. But I don't care about all that. That's the gobbledygook of people.
It is gobbledygook.
But my question, my push and drive is, if you don't draw or expound or talk about the vision, what is the big picture? Where are we going, and what is restraining us this way instead of going this way? Because it says, well, the vision of people dwell without restraint. They're not restrained to a certain path. They don't know why they're there, and they don't know where they're going, and so they wander, and you lose them. And that's because the leadership has lost its way and is not getting across the big picture. So when somebody comes up to you and says, why are we doing this? Where are we going? You point to the picture and go, because to get there, we got to do this. We're going there, we need to do this. That is the right way of teaching and preaching and being a leader, is the big picture, the vision. Once they get that vision spelled out to them, they can either accept it or not. I mean, the children of Israel wanted to get to the promised land. That was the big picture. But they were so much gobbledygook and doing whatever they wanted to do, they wandered for 40 years because they were unruly people, stiff-necked. And so when they died off and he brought up, Joshua rose up to leadership, Joshua said, we're going in. You're going with me or not? I don't care. And God said, okay, wherever you set the sole of your foot, I'll give it to you. And so he just said, well, all I need to do is put my foot in this area, and it's mine. That's leadership. That's big picture. That's vision. But for 40 years, they wandered around because I don't know what Moses did for 40 years, except judge between the tribes and try to keep order there. But these people were, and he had 40 years died off that whole generation. Those that were 60-ish, 40 years were gone. And so the next group of people were there ready. Joshua stood up and said, and Joshua was chosen by God to be the next leader. And all that part we can talk about later. But the point is, he said, okay, folks, we're going this way. And the reason why we're going this way is because it's a direct route to the promised land. And they said, well, yeah, but we got to get across. You know, people talk about the parting of the Red Sea. Well, guess what? He parted Jordan too, which was on the way to the promised land. They had to cross Jordan. So we forget all that little stuff, but that's the truth. And so as he began to go toward what God was telling him to go toward, God began to undertake for him, just like he undertook for Moses, parted the sea and all that.
You know, one of the things there, a lesson that just kind of got pulled out in my mind there, it goes to show you that certainly the nature of who you're moving along, that you may have to get people to move along with you who will not see the promised land. And the reality being that the kinds of baggage that people are bringing with them can be very detrimental, especially to them ever seeing the promised land.
Well, I think that's why God let them wander for 40 years till he killed off all the old.
Yeah, I could only imagine somebody who's 40, 50 years old, who's lived their entire life as a slave, compared to their children. It's a very different situation.
They weren't a slave mentality at that point. They died off. That's right.
I try to explain the temperament stuff to people, and they don't get it, who are of the type who aren't going to get it in the first place. But one of the things I've tried to bring up is conservatives in America think that conservatism means what we normally think of conservative. It means like freedom, like independence, you know, a government that like small government and like low taxes. That's not what conservative means. Conservative actually means slow change, old ways, like slow to change is more accurate. And what I've tried to explain to people, again, they're not of mind to actually hear what I'm actually saying. What they don't understand is there is those conservative types in other places, which would that are you actually, like you person who I'm telling this to, and guess what? They have exact opposite opinions than you do. Mm-hmm. There's actual conservative people right now in the Northeast who I promise you do not like Trump.
Oh, definitely.
But by the nature of who they are actually conservatives. They're not progressives or whatever. And if you get what I'm saying, this is subtly what I'm saying. I'm not talking about politics. I'm talking about the nature of who that person is. They're the person who what conservative actually does is take the environment that they are in, and when it's all encompassing, that is the way. right? That's the guardian nature. That is the way, and they're shepherding it forward. Dude, they were in the Soviet Union because by the time that they had grown up, their entire lives in the Soviet Union, communism was not a progressive idea. It was a conservative, long-held, old idea. These people were holding on to, they were not the blue-haired, ring-nosed person who was holding on to the Soviet Union and communism. It was actually old people who were old and acting like a conservative person. It's
Yeah.
important to understand this stuff because the people who were trying to be like conservatives in America were blue-haired, ring-nosed people. So putting all that kind of stuff in perspective, I've tried to explain to people that people like my dad, he would be he'd be a communist if he lived somewhere else. And of course, he doesn't understand that because he believes in some other things.
Yeah,
Like,
and
no,
people. Yeah,
you're
I
a
get
person
that.
who's holding it. So back to the Joshua point, the people who were on that initial journey, they had a lot of baggage. And even if they reached the promised land, I promise you they would not have appreciated it.
Oh, there's a lot of them that never really quite got it. Like that was it. Reuben, Gad, Reuben, and half the tribe of Manasseh didn't have the understanding that they had to go dwell in the promised land. So they said, "Could we stay on this side of Jordan?" Numbers 32, because we're raising a lot of cattle, but we will go and fight for you. So they went in and fought, but they went back to they claimed the land that was in Moab area, which was the eastern part of Israel, of the promise, east of Jordan.
Yeah.
By the
Jordan River.
way, when Jesus came along 1,000 years later, or whatever it was, hundreds of years later, when he came into the scene, he had to deliver a demoniac that was full of demons, the legion of demons, okay? He delivered that man in Decapolis, which was the area of Moab where those two and a half tribes decided to stay on this side of Jordan because they were raising cattle. When he delivered the legions of demons out of that man, he sent those demons into pigs, into swine, which is the first reference to deviled ham. But anyway, so suddenly you realize they didn't quite get in the promised land where they belonged, and they ended up raising unclean animals, which were pigs. Started out okay with cattle, but that was not the intended plan.
That's pretty
and
solid.
so they held back, and they paid for it. Even though over time they grew and they got some success, but they ended up with demoniacs and pigs and all kinds of problems. So yeah, even those that are in the group and get across, they even fight and pray and stand with you, but they don't quite get the whole concept of being in the promise, in the purposes of God, and they miss what God intended for them. And in time, that will end up being something else. It's not because of his judgment. It's because, look, I've got this way, and this thing is what I'm said I want you to do. And if you don't want to do it, fine. But you will pay for that later. I won't make you pay. It just won't work for you. There are consequences to not getting into the promised land and not getting into where God intended you to be. You will end up being entertaining the wrong thing and getting a part of the wrong thing, and which is what they did. They helped Israel get the promised land and everything. That was great. But they went back and stayed in Moab area, and they ended up being screwed up problems, lots of problems with that tribe. I think it was Gad, Reuben, and half the tribe of Manasseh. I think I'm right there. So you can't just you got to be in with the crowd. You got to be where it's supposed to be, where God wants you to be. Because in time, they look good, but you're gonna pay for it later. And as we find that they did, because the demoniac was in that area, and it's interesting. He tried to get out of that area, and Jesus said, in mercy, go back and tell them what happened to you and how you got set free from the pigs, from the demons. Go back and give them the message of freedom and grace. God is so full of grace, amazing. But anyway, there's where a big picture is the place. He governs us in order to bless us. He doesn't govern us. Even God doesn't govern us to lord it over us and tell us what to do, and he's in control. That's not his bluster or his thing. He is in control. He is God, but he's doing these things to bless us, giving us directives in order for us to enjoy the blessing that he has intended for us all along. Hallelujah. And so that's it. That's my message. Leadership gets us there. And what you go through helps form us. And we get a part of that leadership.
It's a requirement.
It is. You can't get out of it. There's no way to get out of it.
The reality is a lot of people, because they don't have that, that is why they are the way they are. It was not, for example, until I went, the kind of the turn in my story is that it was a very woe is me until I deployed to Afghanistan and was given too much responsibility, an absurd amount of responsibility, but too dumb to know any difference.
Yeah, Marines helped a lot.
They did. And then I came back and all of a sudden it was like, wow, these are children and this is like a children institution. Like I went back to college and I was like, I was no longer of the world.
Yeah.
And at that point, I had the ability to do things beyond what normal people might do because I'm not inundated with all this other kind of stuff that I was before. I came back and was like, this is silly. Then all of a sudden my wife's like, ah. So super successful, but it was the crucible. It was the actually doing something in the real world. It's those kinds of things that made me go from boy to man.
So leaders, comment, say hi, do something. This is a laid-back, easy talk today, but the point still is there to catch the vision.
Yep.
Get a hold of where God's saying wants you to go, and go for it with some fire, doggone it.
I think that's no kidding. Fire.
It's some kind of passion.
Like your comments should be fiery on here.
Be fiery, yeah. Be real fiery on him.
Well, that's what always happens. I attract a lot of fire.
Just give me praise and adulation. Just be really fiery on Mike. Okay.
All right. I guess we'll see you next week. It's been an hour. Bye.
Later.